And welcome back, everybody, to the 2-point conversion NFL DFS podcast, breaking down your week 2 DraftKings slate. The three of us are back and ready to go. You can find me on Twitter at BDintric. I am joined by Bucks on Twitter at BPSnow11, and James, he's on Twitter at paydirt_DFS. Bucks, James, how we doing?
Doing great, my man. Thanks for having us again. It's going to be a good week.
Yeah, doing fantastic. Excited to talk about a new week and go over last week as well.
Yeah, well, you hit it on the head. Let's recap real quickly. If you've been on Twitter at all, you either seem to have gotten crushed last week or you did very well. There's rarely an intermediate out there. But, Bucks, I believe you were one of those intermediates. How did you do last week?
Yeah, I rolled out there with week 1. Great contest. So I rolled out a little heavier than normal. I had 6 lineups. 5 lineups did not cash, but my one real heavy lineup is the only one that cashed, which broke me even. So I feel like I was very fortunate compared to most.
Yeah, definitely. James, you had a pretty good week, especially in your cash games. How'd that go for you? And
we took down double up on play, so that was good. But I only hit the double ups by like 3 points because Lev Bell. That was not a great Bob, but Rams tense. But yeah, it's there. I think I had 40%. Really good week 1 for me. Hoping to keep going.
That's good. Very, very good. I got crushed quite a bit, but it's a new week, as they say. I went with my gambles. They didn't pay off. It seemed like it was 2 or 3 guys in each lineup that just destroyed me. But we'll see how things go this week. And this week we'll do it a little differently. We'll go game by game and see how it goes. So we'll start it off real quick because most of you will listen to this sometime on Thursday or Friday, so this game might not even matter. But Houston at Cincinnati, your first Thursday night special. We have a whopping where did it go? Oh, crap. Cincinnati's a 5-point favorite in this matchup at home. Bucks, anything you're liking in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, there's some potential here, I think, with Cincinnati being the heavy favorite. There's a couple plays you can obviously get behind. I think that Houston, they obviously have a decent defense, but I think it can be beat. I think that A.J. Green should have a decent game. But, again, it all depends on game flow with them being the heavy favorites. It could lean on that spread of backs they have over there with Mixon hopefully getting a bunch of touches and showing what he can do. Whereas Houston expected to be behind most of the game, so they're probably going to be airing it out. Hopkins, you could go over, but honestly, I really don't like this game for the most part. And I typically try to avoid the Thursday slate in general. But this would be one of those weeks where I would play a Thursday through Monday and completely avoid the Thursday and let all the other guys just trying to get something early because they're degens out there.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. When I approach the Thursday, I usually completely ignore it. Most times I play Sunday-only slates. When I do, it's when there's games like this. I'll play that Thursday through even Monday slate and completely fade the game. At worst, I'll sprinkle a defense in of probably the home team, like Cincinnati's defense. I can somewhat get behind in this, but otherwise I want nothing to do with this game. James, any appeal to you in this ballgame?
Yeah, I'm with the Buck here. No, I'm with doing Thursday through Monday and trying to do cash games, stuff like that. Those Thursday quarterbacks, I don't be good. There's not going to be much here. The only person I want is Hopkins, who just got absolutely fed last week. Insanity. he's got his value. I agree. I don't really want.
All right, having some technical difficulties there. We'll get him back here soon enough. Right now, Bucks. Let's move on to the Cleveland and Baltimore game. Baltimore is at home. They are a 7.5-point favorite, over under 41 in this matchup. Baltimore looked outstanding defensively in week 1. Anything you're looking at in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that you could definitely get behind here. I'm interested with Danny Woodhead being hurt, kind of how they're going to approach the running back situation. They obviously have Terrence West. They have Javorius Allen. And so I'm interested to see how they play that. Being ahead, you'd think that once they're ahead, they're going to be running the ball a ton. So I'm probably not going to play much of this game. The only I do like a little bit of Isaiah Crowell if they can throw him the ball being behind. But outside of that, this game, with so many hot games this week, picking such a blowout potential and having one of the lowest total points of the week is not a game that I'm likely going to be targeting. There's a couple options there, like I mentioned, but I'm probably not going to be touching it.
Yeah, it's definitely not the most attractive game in the world. Like you said, maybe Crowell if they pass the ball, but at the same time, the only real option that I see would be Javorius Allen, Buck Allen to many from the college days, as he looks to be the lead back taking over for Woodhead with West back there. Allen got a big role, but they're up big. So last game, you don't really know what he's going to get. He's 4,100. So you can get a little cushion out of that, but there's not too much to like. You can get some cheapy wide receivers if you need to, but I'm not running to play that game. Like you said, there's much better matchups out there, and we'll kind of look that direction. Let's take a look at your next matchup. You got the Buffalo Bills at the Carolina Panthers. Carolina 7.5-point favorite. Over under 42.5. Carolina's got about a 25-point implied team total. This is a game you might be able to attack in a few different ways. Where are you looking here, Bucks?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that you can look at with this game. Obviously, with it doesn't have the highest of point totals, but Carolina's total itself is pretty high. Obviously, you have some studs, Cam Newton, LaShawn McCoy. And then they really helped Christian McCaffrey last week be pretty active in the game plan, receiving, running, lining up in the slot, everything that you can imagine. And so there's a couple things that I do like this week. I'm not a big Cam Newton fan this week. I think I have him like 12th overall in my model, but in general, I think the only guy that I might potentially play is McCaffrey, but I think he'll be so highly owned that I'm going to avoid him as well.
Yeah, I was looking at Cam Newton in this matchup. Buffalo did struggle a bit, surprisingly, with the tight end position, so against the Jets. So Newton to Olsen, we know, is a good combo and a decent stack in a high spread situation. It's just to carry you, probably not. Olsen as a one-off could be decent, but he's 5,500. Pay up for Gronk or pay down for a ton of other options at that position. Basically, there's no wide receivers really worth looking into, and McCaffrey is pretty much your only option for the fact that they'll throw to him and run him. He did get a heavy workload. It was close to 50% of the snaps at the running back position, which is good to see how that goes forward. Shady, I'll stay away from in this matchup. It was frustrating to see how vultured he got all game last week. 3 touchdowns inside the 1-yard line were not to him. But James, I believe you're back. What do you have on this Buffalo-Carolina matchup?
Now? Is this going to work now?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, I have thoughts here. So down McCoy, even in considering the fact that he got vultured 3 times, that's kind of been how it's always been. Even Jonathan Williams used to like vulture at the goal line. It's why they went and got Tolbert, and that's really obvious now. He was the goal line back. Real between basically the 10s break from the 10-yard line out into the end zone, and he gets enough usage in the passing game as well to really pay off a high price tag. So I don't have any problems with him. Less appealing, but I think that Sean McCoy. And then on the other side, Newton too old. I don't have Elvin Benjamin right now because he's not getting separation on the San Francisco corners, and I don't really have much confidence in him getting separation to Greg Olson's fantastic kind of well.
Yeah, should be an interesting matchup there. We'll go to Arizona at Indy. Maybe Carson Palmer gets some, semblance of decency in this matchup facing the cupcake Indianapolis Colts. Arizona's a 7-point road favorite, over under 44. Arizona 25.5-point team total. There are some options here if you want to take the chance on Palmer. Bucks, what are you looking at in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, this was a dream scenario for anybody that had drafted David Johnson. This was going to be perfect, but that obviously fell to shit last week. He's going to be out 8, 9, 10, 11 weeks, whatever. With that being said, they announced Kerwin Williams being the starter. I think he's viable this week, but there's so many options there in the backfield. There are a couple plays here that I do like this week. None really on the Colts side of the ball, especially with their expected score under 20 points. So a couple guys that I potentially would play here. Obviously, you have Fitz in the mix, but the one guy, just from a value perspective, that I'm looking at is J.J. Henry. He's a guy that I looked at a lot today. I think he's $3,800. He's super cheap. And so he's a guy that I'm going to be looking at this week that has massive upside potential. He got a ton of passes thrown his way last week. And I think that he's worth a look for sure. J.J. Nelson, is $3,800. So I'll have a bunch of him. And then especially I think John Brown's going to play, but he's a little bit questionable. But again, outside of that, Fitz is always in play if you like him. I think he'll be chalky again this week. But again, I'm not touching anybody kind of on that Indianapolis side of the ball. I'm excited to see what Brissett does for a full game, but even then, not interested. Too many other good games.
Yeah, again, tons of good games. Palmer, he was so bad last week. If he can't do it this week, though, there's no hope for the man. If you want to be super contrarian at 6K, I can understand stacking him with Fitz. I can get behind that. Otherwise, stay away from him. Fitz, I'm a Fitz guy, as you could tell from last week, $6,500. He should be fed the ball over and over and over again this game. I do like that J.J. Nelson call, too, because they'll be able to spread it around all day in this matchup. The running back situation.
I think the only thing you have to worry about there is kind of the game flow. And you better hope that they throw and score through the air early, or it's not going to happen, I don't think. Because they're going to pound the ball.
And that's why I think we'll have to listen to more of the beat writers and everything. But, the name du jour is Kerwin Williams right now, and he's going to be chalky as heck at $4,800. But if he is the starter and they are saying they're going to give him the workload, again, the game flow, like you're saying, he could be fed the ball 20-plus times, which volume-wise at $4,800 could come up big because we know Indianapolis cannot stop the run. They can't stop anything. They can't stop a cold. But I don't like the fact that he's going to be super chalky, but he could be in a really, really good spot right there. The only other thing would be the Arizona defense, but I'm not paying 4,100 for that. And I do want to see the Brissett thing, like you said. I think he gives them a much, much better option than Tolzien back there. It's why I almost want to throw a dart at T.Y. Hilton at $5,300, but I can't trust Indianapolis's offense at all. But I have a feeling he's going to just want to go to his guy over and over and over again. So that's something to keep an eye on for future weeks, indeed. Do we have James?
Are we sure that Kerwin Williams is going to be chalk? Are we sure that Kerwin Williams is going to be chalk?
I'm not sure.
See, I don't know if he is.
I'm not sure, but he's definitely one of those guys that everybody seems to be hyping up early in the week because he got named the starter.
Yeah. Like, we only have him projected for 54% of the rushing attempts. And I mean, that's only about 13 attempts for 60 yards or so. I don't think that at 4,800 people are going to. There's better running backs for us to go for, especially if Jordan Howard is continuing to be because he's 4,400 against Chicago. So I don't know on ownership yet, but if Kerwin Williams is chalk, I am going to go ham in GPP.
Yeah. Let's move on to – yeah.
I think that the only play here for me is Larry Fitzgerald because I think that he picks up DJ's passing attempts, and that's really the only play that I want here. I'm going to fade most of the rest of the game. I think Carson Palmer's interesting in GPPs.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I was saying. Palmer's a very interesting GPP play. I love Fitz. He will be a staple in a lot of my lineups at that price tag. We'll go on to Tennessee at Jacksonville. The surprising Jacksonville defense in Houston last week. We'll see if it carries over against Tennessee. Tennessee's actually a minus 1.5 point road. Total is 43.5. You got Tennessee with a 23-point implied team total. Jacksonville 20.5. Bucks, what are you looking at in this matchup?
Yeah, this one's an interesting one to me because I think Jacksonville's D is pretty damn strong. I mean, typically, if you just look at this game real quick, you'd think that Mariota, Delaney Walker, Richard could tear them up, but Jacksonville overall has been really stout. And so I think that this could be a pretty tight game, which lends itself to some options there. I think with the implied point total, again, being on one of the lower sides, I'm probably going to avoid it for the most part. But if you're looking at some of the plays this week, I mean, you have Mariota at $6,400. I mean, $6,400, you could do much worse. I think one of the looks that I'd potentially play this week, just from a pure volume perspective, would be Leonard Fournette, $6,500, and you know he's going to touch the ball a ton. And I think they're going to get him more involved in the passing game this week. But they don't seem to have any concern about his usage and the amount of touches he gets. So he'll be super heavy as well. Other than that, I mean, you have a lot of guys like DeMarco Murray that are typical studs that the Jacksonville defense, I think, can kind of drown out. So, I mean, you have some other options here. I think the two plays that I'm most interested in looking at, and I'm going to dive a little deeper into, are Allen Hurns and Marquise Lee. I'm interested to see how they come out and perform. Tennessee looked a little vulnerable last week. They did play pretty decently. But I do like Hurns this week just from a pure – I think he'll get a ton of targets. So,
yeah. James, what do you got on this matchup?
So it's for real. I don't think that I'm going to – I'm not really interested in Marcus Mariota. I'm not really interested in DeMarco Murray. I'm just not interested in guys. I do like the Jacksonville side of the ball, though. Marquise Lee is one of the better values have over Deodo, so I agree with that play, Bucks. I think that's a really strong play, especially at 3,800 when he's involved in the 2 wide receiver sets. He usually. Sure. I do have some worry about Leonard Fournette. They're not concerned with his usage, and I agree with you on that. But we got to remember that T.J. Yeldon was inactive last week. He was getting the receiving down work. I do think that he'll touch it between 18 and like 23 times the receiving work. Yeldon comes back, have that kind of monopolized. But he looked great. Be the guy. So the only interest that I really have here, I'm okay with Hearns. I think that Blake Bortles is too cheap, and I think that he's worth a shot in GPPs. And I like Marquise Lee. Over on the ball, I don't really have any interest. I think Jacksonville's real.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've been digging in on this one, and I think a lot of people are going to try to say Jacksonville's defense isn't any good. And I think, honestly, at $3,100, they have an option at as a defensive play this week. They'll be overlooked, in my opinion. Could be totally wrong. But position player-wise, Fournette at $6,500 is one of my running backs on my list. At the wide receiver position, I agree that the Hearns-Lee combo is going to be really interesting. Hearns, he might be worth a value at $3,900 in this matchup. But for the most part, I just want to have a piece of Fournette. And I want to see, again, how Corey Davis does with Tennessee. This kid is very, very good. He's still learning the system. He could be an interesting play going forward. He's 4,100 for GPPs. Him or Rashard Matthews, you just don't know where it's going to go because that Jacksonville D, those defensive backs are very, very good. So it's pretty much Fournette, maybe some Jacksonville D. That's as far as I'm going to go in that matchup. Let's go to Philadelphia at Kansas City. Kansas City, everybody but the Patriots fans' favorite team right now. Kansas City, 4.5-point home favorites, over under 47.5. KC, a 26-point implied team total. Philadelphia, 21.5. Let's let James kick this one off.
We have Philadelphia projected for a lot of plays. We have them projected for 68 plays, and 40 passes. Carson Wentz, like it's for real that they just want to pass the ball in this offense. They know that they don't have a real running game well in that offense, and they pretty much use him at the goal. Just like Carson Wentz carry. Kansas City's still a good defense, so his numbers are a little depressed for us. But I don't mind who's Wentz again. He's good, like he's talented. Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz are good weapons. I think that Nelson Aguilar is for real and that he's not going anywhere. He got great usage last week. So I don't mind the Philadelphia. I think Kansas City side of it, it's pretty much just Kareem Hunt and still you could. But Philadelphia is not defending very much this year. I think 7, and I think that their core will give them. I think that this game is going to go on. I don't in cash or GP big play guys.
What about you, Bucks?
Yeah, I really like this game, and I think this is a sneaky game for me. Because I think that, and it's tough for me to say this because you just can't trust it. I mean, Alex Smith had a ridiculous week last week, and I don't see that happening again. But with that being said, you look at some of the pieces that he has there, and they're in great spots again. I mean, really, really good spots. And so you have a guy like Tyreek Hill, who you'd consider him having a fairly tough week, but Eagles lost Ron Darby. And so he's going to have a pretty soft matchup this week. Not only that, but Kareem Hunt's obviously a weapon and can take it to the house at any point in time. And then you also have who I think could be big this week in Travis Kelce, because up the middle, the Eagles struggle. Again, I think they're really solid on the outside, but up the middle, they could get exposed. And then on the other side of the ball, obviously Carson Wentz is in play. He's still a fairly cheap option this week. But I think the one guy that, and I hate playing him, and we talked about this a little earlier, is Nelson Aguilar. I think he has disappointed so many times in the past, but with that being said, he is in a great spot. I mean, he's playing against a backup slot corner, and so he has the opportunity to be targeted pretty heavily. They did the same thing last week against Washington. They targeted him in the slot a ton. I think Alshon and Torrey Smith will have Marcus Peters on them, which will be tough. So Nelson Aguilar is another one that I really like. But this game really starts off the week for me because I think you could have another sneaky GPP option in Wentz or Smith. Smith may be a little higher ownership than normal because he had a big week last week, but either way, he has a ton of weapons there. And all of them I feel are priced pretty fairly. Nelson is $4,400. I think Kareem, Tyreek, they're fair price and represent a ton of value. They could definitely hit 3-4x no problem and take it to the house at any point in time. What do you think about this game?
This is a really interesting game because you have a Kansas City team who's coming off that Thursday night just showcase at New England. They have the 5th highest team total on the slate, and these guys are priced pretty well. Alex Smith, like you said, 5,700. What I want to ask you is, you were at the Redskins game. Was it the Redskins kind of screwing up more, or was Philadelphia actually playing good defense?
It was both. I mean, when you look at the game, Kirk did not look sharp. He looked mediocre at best in the preseason. That continued. I mean, you had a bunch of drop passes. You had balls being thrown over receivers' heads. I think the Redskins just played sloppy. But that being said, the Eagles took advantage of situations and obviously got the W, but I definitely don't think that the Eagles D was as good as the Redskins made them look. Put it that way.
That's what I was wondering because, Smith at 5,700 seems like it could be chalk. I think he makes for a very interesting cash game play, value-wise and everything. Kareem Hunt, I think, is going to be the chalk of the entire slate this game. I mean, I don't mind him. I'll probably stick to the passing game of Smith. And I'll look at Kelce, like you mentioned. I like him a lot at 5,100. But you can also look at Tyreek Hill. He can do so much slot, out wide, the works. You got to like that in the Kansas City system. But then, like you mentioned with Philadelphia, Wentz is definitely in play. They're going to throw it and throw it and throw it, especially if they get behind, throw it even more. And I know the price, it's almost $2,000 more than last week. It's $1,800. But Zach Ertz at 5,300, that's his target. That's who he's going to love. And with Eric Berry out, Eric Berry was the guy that covered the tight ends. In the past, they did struggle against the tight end when Berry has been out. So Ertz' price tag has gone up. It might scare some people off of him. I think he can be a nice play in this slate as well. The only concern I have with Philadelphia is you're at Arrowhead, which they've in the past has been a huge home field advantage. We shall see. I think both are in play. Alex Smith could be another nice play on Sunday. Let's take a look at one of the key games of the week. We have New England at New Orleans. New England's about a 7-point road favorite. Over-under is 55.5 in this game. They have a 31-point New England team total, 24.5 New Orleans. This is locked and loaded. Let's see if we've got James back. What do you have on this game, James?
Well, we're on New England Saints, right?
Yep.
All right. So don't fade this game. That's the point. That'd be a really bad idea. We have two elite quarterbacks going up against each other. Both offenses super high-powered. They didn't look like it week one, but we know that week 1 is kind of a joke anyway. Defense is still getting settled in. Preseason is not something that we can take into consideration here. So Tom Brady is my second top-rated quarterback on the week. Drew Brees is my 4th, so I'll be having a whole bunch of them. With Tom Brady, I think that so if you're going to stack this game, you're either going to multi-enter or you're just going to take a dive on probably the lowest owned option for either team, in my opinion. So you'll have Tom Brady, and then you'll stack him with, like, if Brandon Cooks is going to be the chalk, then you take Chris Hogan or you take Gronk, and you take the one that's going to be less owned, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you take Drew Brees, you're going to take like Brandon Coleman as a one-off, or you're going to take Colby Fleener, who's super, super cheap for this matchup, and you avoid Michael Thomas. That would be the way that I were to go about it if I had one lineup in GPPs. In cash, I think that Tom Brady is like a stone-cold lock, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm not paying down QB in cash this week. There's no way I'm doing that. Not with all the value that we have at running back. I just want Tom Brady. I will have Tom Brady a lot this week.
Yep.
That's basically my thoughts. Tom Brady and the low-owned options to pair him with.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. What do you got, Bucks?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I only play 3 lineups a week, and I think 2 of them are going to be heavy on this slate, obviously. I think that I personally love Cook's spot this game. And so I know he's going to be chalk, but I'm going to get a piece of him, especially playing against the Saints. And then I'm going to go and pair with Michael Thomas on the opposite side of the ball as well, to mix that up a little bit. I know we talked about this earlier, but that's the way I'm going to go. I do like, and I considered this earlier, basically going Brady Gronk as well, because I think at his price tag, he's going to be lower owned than a Cooks would be, that kind of thing. With that being said, I think there is enough value around the rest of the slate to take a Brady, a Cooks, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Do it. I'll be a 2-year-old for a minute, but if Gronkowski could have that price forever, that's the total Gronk price right there. That just fits in. He is a great play, like you said. He's priced up there with almost the top wide receivers on the slate, so he might be passed up unless people say, screw it, we have to play Brady Gronk. I agree with everything you said at the wide receiver positions. Brady is an outstanding play. Here is, I love the Cooks Thomas, but keep an eye on the health of Danny Amendola. If he doesn't play, $1,000 at running back is very sneaky because he slid into the slot a lot on Thursday night. Is the $4,000 running back? That could be a nice GPP angle to get some deviation on this. I like the Fleener angle at 31 as well. The other one game, but New England was atrocious against the likes of Kareem Hunt. And some of that was out of the passing game. Alvin Kamara at $3,500 could be a very, very nice play out of the backfield in a GPP as well. Those are some of the lower-owned guys to target if you're not going straight up top to the big boys.
I did kind of want to mention really quick with Gronkowski. One of the reasons why Gronkowski has always been so effective in that offense is because of the Edelman and the Amendola routes underneath. And Gronkowski, so those, well, I don't know if you guys play Madden, but like when you run the mesh, what happens is those wide receivers underneath, and then that's straight streak. Each one of them move up or moving back, and that's why that offense is so effective. So I kind of worry that Gronkowski isn't going to have those wide open plays up the seat out and / Edelman running those crosses with that metal. It's not enough to scare me off in that, obviously, but moving forward, look at whether he is able to get the separation from the linebacker that he was able to last year and years past.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. But yeah, like you said, the first thing you said is the most important part is don't fade this game. Let's move on to Minnesota at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh going home, so now we can get rid of the whole Big Ben sucks on the road narrative. Pittsburgh -6 favorite, over under 45.5. Pittsburgh 25.5 team total. Bucks, what are you taking away from this game?
I really like this game. I think that with the basically coming back home, I think Big Ben is in play. He's not a favorite of mine, and he won't be on one of my 3 lineups, but I do like him this week and his potential because of the weapons he has around him. I think the one target I'm going to have on this team, obviously, I think Le'Veon Bell is going to have a good game. I don't think he has back-to-back performances like he had last week, but I really like Martavius Bryant this week. The cornerback he's going to go against struggled ridiculously last week, and Antonio Brown's going to be on Xavier Rhodes for the most part. Not saying anybody's going to stop Antonio Brown, really, but Ben threw, I think, 4 or 5 deep balls to Martavius last week, and so it's just a matter of time before they click. And I think this is a good spot for them to do it because there's going to be so much emphasis put on stopping Antonio. Like I said, though, I think that opens the door for Martavius, and I think it opens the door for Le'Veon as well. So I like that. Martavius is going to be a core play of mine this week. I have him as my 7th ranked wide receiver, and I think he's $5,500 this week. So huge value there. On the opposite side of the ball, Sam Bradford looked incredible last week. I mean, he made throws that I haven't seen in a long time out of hardly any quarterback. So I'm excited to see him play again. I think the Steelers' D is not as good as people are making them out to be. So I think that Diggs and Thielen have a chance to really go off, especially Diggs. I think Joe Hayden is going to get burned again. He likes to bite on the ball. So Diggs has a chance to really, really have a great game again. Dalvin Cook is the one spot that I'm personally going to be fading. Unless they toss him 6 or 7 balls, I think he gets stuffed quite a bit. Steelers at home seem to do a really good job of stopping the run. They always give up some deep plays, which is why I love the receiving core. But Dalvin, I think I have him ranked as like my 18th running back this week. So I'm going to be fading him.
Yeah, I like it all. What about you, James?
So I really stack this week. It's going to be what I'm like, and I was high on them last week too, but I'm going to be higher on this week. Because one, they were pretty much a dud last week. Le'Veon Bell was awful. Martavius Bryant was awful. Antonio Brown was a man because he's man, and that's what happens. I really like them in this spot. I mentioned Minnesota does not have a great cornerback. They're really good, but Antonio Brown is better. I love Martavius Bryant. I think that's an elite. Lev Bell is going to have a bounce back here. Minnesota is actually one of the worst teams in the league. First, Lev Bell got a spot this week. Fantastic. I really like the Steelers side, and then I like the Minnesota side as well. One of those games that can be kind of sneaky with New England and New Orleans having that huge total. I just like stacking on both sides. We have a fan value. I'll be a shootout.
Yeah, it's a very interesting game. Like you said, you could compare to the New England, New Orleans game. We'll have Atlanta, Green Bay later. We can look into the obvious Steelers side at home, and you got a Big Ben back at home at $6,700 can definitely be a value. Antonio at 92 or 94 is very steep, so I do like that Martavius angle at 55 that you were talking about, Bucks. Definitely in play there. And then Jesse James at 32. He might be one of the chalkier value tight ends because of his performance last week. but something to keep an eye on as well, because Fleener, once they started throwing it around last week, did do pretty well against that Vikings D. When it comes to Minnesota, I was looking straight at Sam Bradford when I saw these prices. A $5,500 quarterback. I know it's on the road. I have never been sold on this Pittsburgh defense, especially the last few years. They play a lot of, like, it seems, bend but don't break. They don't really shut people down. So Bradford at 55 matched up with Diggs at 61 or even Thielen at 5K. I like a lot. And I don't even mind looking at Kyle Rudolph at 42. There's other options around that 4K range that I like a little better. I'd rather have Diggs or Thielen. But that Minnesota offense is definitely in play. And we'll get overlooked because people that just look at team totals and spreads, well, sure, you're going to see a 6-point favorite and Minnesota with a 19.5-point team total, and they're going to walk right past it. And I think that might be a bad decision this week. This Minnesota team might be for real and something to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure. I think Minnesota has plenty of weapons to they're not a one-trick pony anymore. And so I think they have plenty of options to spread it around that the Steelers are, frankly, likely not going to keep up with.
Yeah, I completely agree. Chicago, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's first game of the year, of course, as they missed the game against Miami because of Hurricane Irma. They are 7-point home favorite, over under 43, 25-point implied team total for Tampa Bay, 18 for Chicago. Bucks, what are you looking at here? Because Tampa Bay didn't look good at all in the preseason, but people are in love with them this week.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting is I mean, obviously you have elite options like Mike Evans. So that's already in play from the get-go. And then you have guys like Deshaun Jackson, which represent huge value this week because Winston loves throwing the deep ball, and I think Deshaun Jackson at any time can break one loose. So at $4,900, he represents a pretty solid value there. But with that being said, you also have a really heavy favorite. And if they get up early, going to Evans, going to Deshaun Jackson, that kind of thing, I think that leans heavier towards potentially Jacquizz Rodgers, who I think has a big game here. I really like the spot that he's in. And then on the other side of the ball, obviously you have some weapons there. Kevin White got hurt last week, so that opens the door for some other guys that I'm not sure can handle anything. The one guy I'm interested to see how he shakes out this week, because he may get a ton of work with as thin as Chicago is Tariq Cohen. He played everywhere last week, and it was impressive to see. So I like him this week. I think he'll be uber chalk at $4,100, especially with them potentially playing from behind. He could catch 5 or 6, 7 balls easy, and then pick up. I'd be interested to know what James thinks about the share of snaps he gets from the running back position, but I'd wager it's in the 30 to 40% range, depending on how Jordan Howard's feeling. So other than that, I mean, there's not too many options that I like kind of at the tight end range. I'm not playing either of those defenses. So I think you have a couple guys in play there. But I think Evans will be super chalky this week. Deshaun Jackson, I think, is an upside value play. But there's so many other good games. This game's going to be tough to get down and dirty with.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, James?
So to answer that first question on Tariq, we have him at 25% of the share of rushing.
Interesting. Okay.
Which it's not like super high, but like you said, I'm not even interested in him for his rushing upside.
No, yeah, definitely not.
To be completely honest, he's probably the best player on that roster right now.
Who else do they have?
Right. They don't have any talent on that offense. I mean, Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen, they have to find ways to keep those guys involved. And I think that Tariq Cohen last week, he lined up 21 times as a wide receiver.
Yep.
The 21 times as a wide receiver. I love him. And I disagree with you. I don't think he's going to be chalk because I think people are going to talk themselves out of it, like with snaps,
point totals,
and with rushing totals and stuff like that. I think people are going to talk themselves off of it. There can only be so much chalk. Like if you think that Kerwin Williams is going to be chalk, and you think that Quiz is going to be chalk, and you think that Melvin Gordon, who we'll get to, is going to be chalk, like there can only be so much chalk. I don't think Cohen is going to make the cut.
Yeah.
So I really like Cohen in GPPs, especially if he's not chalky. He's the only guy that I want on the Bears. If we go over to the Tampa Bay side, I really, really like Deshaun Jackson. We saw Hooper get 2 passes for like 130 yards last week, and that's a tight end. We know that this defense is susceptible to the big play. So I really like Deshaun Jackson. I like Mike Evans. Mike Evans is one of my top-rated wide receivers this week. Those Bears cornerbacks are not good. So I like the Tampa Bay side of this, but the person that I'm most interested in is Tariq Cohen by a lot.
Yeah, I can't argue that at all. I like both the running backs. You hit on Jaquiz earlier, and then Cohen. I like both of these guys a ton. But Cohen more so, like you guys said, he'll be involved in the passing game quite a bit, and is just that ultimate X factor. He's kind of like a Kareem Huntish type, and he's going to get used a lot in this game. And it's not the worst thing to have. You can't have all non-chalk. A little bit of chalk's not going to kill you. So if it's Cohen and he goes off for 15, 20 plus points, it's worth it. It's like Ertz last week. You had to have it, basically. So Cohen and Rodgers, I'm in on both of them. The receivers you nailed. And keep an eye on Cameron Brate. He's only 3K. A very, very talented tight end that Winston looks at in the red zone a lot if he's not looking at Evans. So Brate at 3K could be a nice tight end option in that matchup as well. Let's move on to Miami at the Chargers. We go to the afternoon games. There is an 8-game only early slate on DK this week, so keep an eye on that. But 4.5-point favorites for the Chargers, 45 over and under, 24.5 team total for the Chargers. James, kick us off on this game. What are you looking at there?
So I really like Phillip Rivers as a quarterback in real life. I think that he's the smartest quarterback in the league, probably. They throw it a lot. We know that he can throw it up to 40 times in a game. We have him projected for 35 pass plays right now, and that's a little bit conservative. But I really like Phillip Rivers. I really, really, really like Keenan Allen. I think that Keenan Allen is probably one of the top 3 plays on this slate. He's too cheap. He got 10 targets, I think, against the Broncos. Scored a touchdown against that Broncos secondary. The Miami secondary is not the Broncos secondary. So I really like Keenan Allen. Melvin Gordon rates really, really well for us at Daily Roto, but I think that he might be a little bit too expensive for me because I'm not going to be spending up at running back this week. I like guys like Julio Jones too much. I like Antonio Brown too much. So I can't afford Melvin Gordon at that price, but he's probably a fine play, especially in cash. On the other side, I've heard some people like Cutler because Trevor Siemian was just able to go 220-2 against them. But look, man, Cutler's not very good, first off. And second off, we know what he's going to do in an Adam Gase offense. Just look at 2015 Adam Gase and Jay Cutler with the Bears. Like, we know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to throw it 20 to 25 times. They're going to run the ball 30 times. Speaking of Jay Ajayi, I would just much rather have Jay Ajayi than Jay Cutler. I can't imagine playing Cutler with all of these quarterbacks. His upside is 20 points if he has a great game. So I really like Jay Ajayi. I think that you could go Devontae Parker because I think he's really good. But don't touch Jay Cutler. Please don't do that. He's not worth the roster spot this week.
What about you, Bucks?
I completely agree about Cutler. I am hoping that being his first game there, that he's going to want to air it out a little bit more than he should. And so I like San Diego defense this week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Devontae Parker, I'm interested to see kind of who he goes up against this week, because if it's Jason Verrett, he could have a really tough time, I think. But he's a big body guy. But I'm just looking into that potential. But like you said, I think that this game lends itself to Jay Ajayi. I think he obviously has a legitimate chance here, depending on what the Chargers can do. With me playing the Chargers defense likely at $2,800, I'm not sure how much of that I can have. I completely agree with you as well on Phillip Rivers. When you look at the potential for Allen Williams, you get kind of a little like excited about Phillip Rivers and his opportunities. But I mean, when you look at his game last week, you thought he was tearing it up, and he had under 200 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just like, okay, that was anticlimactic. Great. He had 3 touchdowns and 18 fantasy points. Okay, cool. And I think we'll likely see that again. I think he could definitely throw 3 more touchdowns this week, and he'll have the same output. So I do like Melvin Gordon this week. I'm not too scared of the price because I do think that he starts his getting into the end zone streak this week. I think they're going to pound him. And I think he scores a touchdown this week on the ground. And obviously he gets targeted a ton as well.
I should say that he's my number 1 rated running back in my models.
Well, thank you, because I agree. I think he has huge potential this week. I mean, he's going to rush. I don't know what you have him at as touches was, but I think he rushes around 20 times, and I think he's going to catch another 5 or 6 balls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have him at rushes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Gordon a lot. I think that higher tag at $7K will, make people want to go up to one of the like Elliott's or somebody else or go down. So I think it's $7K. He's very much in play. And if you not playing Gordon, Keenan Allen at 58, like you said, James, is way too cheap in this game. Unless Miami, and I'm a Dolphins fan, if for some reason they change their defense miraculously, then I'll eat this one. But I'd be shocked. I'm looking forward to not knowing what the score is by halftime because it'll be ugly and going on from there. But the defense, that's my top play in this game. The Chargers defense at $2,800. It's the lowest priced defense I'm going to, and I think they are in a phenomenal spot against Cutler and company. Cutler's going to throw at least 2 interceptions. So you're going to get some productivity there. Maybe a pick 6 gets taken back. A lot to like there with the Chargers D at $2,800. Jets, Oakland. Oakland is at home as a 14-point favorite, the biggest on the slate. Team total of 28.75, overall total of 43.5. This has bloodbath written all over it. At least that's what Vegas says. But people thought Buffalo would crush them too, given Oakland is different than Buffalo. What are you thinking on this one, James?
Man, a 14-point favorite for Oakland seems egregious. I don't think that any team really should be a 14-point favorite in the NFL. The talent level,
never.
Yeah, the talent levels are close enough to where I think that double-digit favorites are kind of a joke, and I'm almost 100% positive that line is going to get bet down to like 11.5 or 11 or something like that, closer to 10.
Yes.
But I don't know. I think that Derek Carr is an incredible play this week. I think that Amari Cooper is an incredible play this week. I'm not sure if you guys follow Scott Barrett, but he released his opportunity graphs, and Amari Cooper was the number 1 in his actual opportunities. So Amari Cooper is going to continue to get fed. They actually showed willingness to get him the ball in the red zone. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think that anybody on the Jets organization can cover Amari Cooper.
No.
No.
Right.
Not a chance.
I like Amari Cooper this week. I like Derek Carr. I really like the Raiders. What's funny about this is that they might go under-owned as 14 favorite.
Absolutely.
And that's crazy to me. So I really have a lot of interest there. I have a lot of interest in like something like Carr, Crabtree, Cooper. I like double stacks there. I like full game stacks not game stacks, but full Oakland stacks. On the Jets, I think that you can consider Matt Forte. A pretty interesting thing. We talked about Tariq Cohen lining up at wide receiver, but Matt Forte lined up, I think, 9 times at wide receiver last week because they don't have anybody. It's kind of the same situation. So I think that Matt Forte is really, really interesting against a soft Oakland secondary. It feels weird to say that about a running back, but it's a thing. They like to line him up as a wide receiver because they don't have talent. So
would you play him over Bilal?
Yeah, I would. I think Matt Forte is a better player than Bilal Powell. Even in his older age, I think that he's more consistent, has better hands. So I like Matt Forte this week as a GPP dart. I think that you could do way worse at his price point. But I love the Raiders this week. I like a full stack there.
Yep.
Yeah, they are a phenomenal stack. There's one name you did not mention. I get it. He's not in the passing game.
Marshawn Lynch.
Marshawn Lynch at $6,000 is going to feast on this Jets defense. His first home game back home in Oakland, the Bay Area. Marshawn Lynch, he's finding the end zone twice on Sunday. He's eating a lot of Skittles. He can pick the berries, the tropical. I don't care. But Lynch at $6K is happening. I had to get that in real quick. Bucks, what else do you like in this game?
Yeah, I mean, this one's honestly really weird to me. And I either think that either Vegas is really sharp or they have this game completely wrong. Because if you look at – obviously, I don't think that spread's right. I think it's closer to 10. But even if you look at the point total at whatever it is, 44, something like that, I mean, at 10-point favorites, I mean, you have a game that really isn't that high scoring. I mean, it's quite a bit of points, and you look at how badly they could potentially beat the Jets, I think that more people are going to gravitate towards Marshawn with a game flow theory, with him kind of taking a bunch of snaps and being back home, and with them being up big, I think, like you mentioned, James, that Carr, Cooper, Crabtree, all of them, I think, could be under-owned this week. And like I said, the point consensus kind of scares me, but with the Jets being so bad, I guess you could see it. But again, with that being said, I think you have some great value there with Amari, Crabtree, Carr stack, because I do think it'll be lower owned. Like Bubba said, though, the one guy that I'm taking a good hard look at $6,000 is Lynch. I'm just not sure if I can pull the trigger on him in one of my 3 lineups.
Yeah, it's just his price tag. He's so far down compared to like the Bells and Ezekiel's and those guys. He just stands out production wise. Should be there, but I agree with what you're saying. What do your guys have him doing, James?
Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah.
We have him. He rates pretty well for us. 62% mark share of the rushing yards. Looks like 17 rush attempts.
Yeah.
So, and we are taking the under on 2 rushing touchdowns.
Well, I think everybody would.
I think everybody would, but I'm just going on a limb. That's one of my bold calls of the week for you right there. But here's another bold call for you. I just want to throw this out there. So we've talked about how in the tournaments, GPPs, you want at least 3x from your players. The New York Jets defense is $2,000. They gave up 21 points last week and still got 4 fantasy points because of sacks and picks. Basically 2 turnovers and a couple sacks, they could give up 4 touchdowns and return close to 3x value. Is that worth anything in a GPP to you?
Not for me. No, not really. Because when you consider, like, I guess people have different definitions of value. There's people that say 3x, and then there's me, where if I'm not getting at least double-digit points from a value play, it's not really worth it to me. Because last week, I thought that I did really well by pivoting off the Rams to the Cardinals, and I still almost lost my entire week because the Rams D put up 28 fantasy points.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think there's a fine line there between value and actually you have to score points. I mean, that's number one.
And that's why I wanted to ask about this, because that's something I even saw last week. I can't remember whose defense it was. It was like a $2,000 or $2,100 defense, and people were all saying, go play them because they don't have to do too much.
Yeah, there's not a very big difference between a good defense and a bad defense given week to week. There's not. I mean, it's like a difference in 5 points. And I really do believe in paying down a defense as like from a construction standpoint. But I don't think that it's something where you say that it's a good value. I think that you say, well, are they going to not have 50 points scored against them? And if not, then they're okay to use, but don't consider it a value.
Yeah. Okay. That's why I want to throw it out there. Let's move to Denver. We got the Cowboys traveling to Mile High. Dallas is a 2.5-point road favorite, but a small over-under of 42, only a team total of 22.5, 22.25 for Dallas. Very low. James, what do you have here?
Ezekiel Elliott is fine. I don't think that the Denver defense is very good anymore. I don't think they'll be a top 10 defense by the end of the year. So I'm not really worried, I guess, about Ezekiel Elliott. He's going to eat. He's going to do what he does. I'm not going to play Des Bryant because very tough cornerbacks have their way with him. He's just not good against tough cornerbacks. And
you can say he's soft.
He's soft, yeah. He's soft.
Not good in general.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a big guy that can catch over other people, but against Aqib Talib and Chris Harris, he's not going to be able to do it. So,
yeah, but even then, his catch rate's so dismal. Good Lord.
I get it. I'm not a big fan of him. I'm not.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I know that he has the ability to score 15 touchdowns in a season just off of a paid rep. But regardless, I don't have interest in him in this matchup. I like Cole Beasley, I think. Would be fine, but really it's just Ezekiel Elliott. On the Broncos side, give me, nothing. I think the Cowboys' defense is good enough to hold while their offense just runs out the clock the entire game. So I don't have any interest in the Broncos.
Yeah, that Cowboys defense at 2,600 is one of the lower ones I do like. I like them and the Chargers as my low-priced options in that matchup. Simeon looked great last game. There's no doubt about it. But we also know who Trevor Simeon really is. So I don't mind Cowboys as a $2,600 defense. And then Ezekiel Elliott's about all I'm looking at in this matchup. You could look at Witten if you want, but I don't need to go there. Given he's 3,400, I'm not paying 34 for Witten. So it's pretty much Ezekiel Elliott. He's going to get fed over and over again at $7,800. He's actually the highest priced running back I'm looking at. I'm actually not going to Bell, which will probably kill me. But Elliott's my top guy this week, price wise. Bucks, what do you have in this matchup?
I don't like it. I'm avoiding altogether. I mean, I guess you could make an argument for getting behind Zeke, but there's so many other guys that are $1,000 cheaper or more, like a Melvin Gordon.
I agree.
That I don't think he represents the value that his tag warrants, I guess. Outside of that, like James said, Des Bryant, and like you said, Des Bryant's not good with tough corners. I mean, he's soft. He drops a ton of balls. He's a little mental midget out there. So I'm not a big fan. I like what James said. The only guy that I even considered looking at this game was Cole Beasley. I think he's always going to be one of those guys that has potential to catch 5 or 6 balls. Even if he goes for 40 yards, he's going to catch a bunch of balls and at least give you some upside there. But overall, I'm fading this game. I'm not a big fan of it. I think Dallas on the road, Denver's D is not as good as it used to be, obviously. But, I mean, when you look at what Vegas thinks as well, low scoring, back and forth. I could honestly see this game being one of those punt, field goal, punt, field goal.
I agree.
Type games. So I'm avoiding it altogether.
Yep, Dallas's defense and maybe nothing else. That's not a bad idea. Next up, we got your Redskins. Washington goes to LA to face the Rams. Rams 2.5-point favorite, over under 46. I really like this Rams offense. I think there's a lot to it. I said it last week. I liked Goff. Bucks, what are you looking at in this one?
Man, the Redskins they're just heartbreakers, man.
I've been a Dolphins fan forever. I get it.
I was at the game last week, and I was sitting there just watching Terrell Pryor drop balls and Kirk Cousins throw it over people's heads, and then that stupid forward pass fumble. It was just miserable. And so I think that there's still obviously there's a ton of talent still on that team, on the offense. Their defense is terrible, man. I mean, that in itself puts any team kind of into play because they're not good. I mean, you can talk about individual pieces, but they don't play as a team. And so I think that Kirk represents a decent GPP option because he had such a bad game last week. He had a terrible preseason, but I think he has big potential. But some of the other pieces here, I think I'm not a big Goff fan. I do like Gurley. I think if Goff can continue to feed him the ball and get him involved in the passing game, that he has a really good shot to have a big game. On the receiving side, yeah, there's not much that I'm going to be touching here. I like Pryor's potential. I think that it's a matter of time. Kirk loves throwing to that guy. So it's just a matter of time. And if Terrell Pryor didn't drop so many balls last week, he would have had a decent game. And he dropped a touchdown. So I think he's going to continue to get fed. I think he's going to have a big game sooner or later. And it could be this game here. As far as some of the other plays, Jamison Crowder didn't look right last week. Josh Doctson didn't look right last week. There's not any Ram receiver that I really like. Cooper Kupp, you can make a case for, obviously. But even then, I'm not a huge fan of him. And then I'm fading all the tight ends in general. I think where this game lies for me, if I were to play anything, is kind of a GPP dart with a Kirk Cousins stack or playing Gurley just for pure volume's sake.
What about you, James?
So Terrell Pryor is another one of those guys that had a stupid actual opportunity score.
Yes.
I think that it was 165 air yards, and that didn't include a 50-yard pass that was called back on holding.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
To Pryor. I mean, that's such insane usage, and we're conservative on him over at Daily Roto. But I really, really like him this week. I don't think that the Rams have an incredible defense. I think that they're going to have a little bit of shell shock going against a team that is better than whatever they thought that the quarter last week.
Yeah.
So I like Kirk Cousins and I like Terrell Pryor this week.
Yes.
I like Jordan Reed this week. The Rams have always been not very good against tight ends. So I like Kirk Cousins. I like Washington stack this week. I'm not sure that it'll make it into the stacks that I build, but I do like it. And I like Pryor a lot.
Yeah.
Especially because he didn't do super great last week.
Yeah,
On the other side,
yeah.
I refuse to touch Todd Gurley unless it's just a nuts matchup like it was last week. And even last week, he averaged 2.3 yards per carry against.
Super disappointing.
That's not even a defense that they rolled out there. They had like water boys out there on defense, and he could only muster 2.3 yards per carry. I can't use Todd Gurley. I won't use that. I do think that Jared Goff is going to realize some of his potential. We don't have his volume up there very highly. We don't
like him very much at all this week, but I do think that he's more of a real deal. The Washington defense is not super great. I think that Cooper Kupp is the real deal. He's going to be like one of those guys. It's a lot like Julian Edelman, where he's just going to run those little short crosses and those slants and eat on volume. So I like Cooper Kupp, especially because Josh Norman doesn't shadow into the slot, and Josh Norman isn't going to shadow Cooper Kupp anyway.
And the
So
Redskins
Are horrible
safeties are awful.
Yep.
Yeah, they're really bad. And they have really slow linebackers too, which is why they've always been bad against receiving backs as well. So I think that my only plays here, I really, really like Terrell Pryor, and I like Cooper Kupp. And I think that I would be in on the nope, that's it for me. That's all I got.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Terrell Pryor's in a phenomenal spot in this one, and Cooper Kupp, I had him circled as one of my lower-priced receivers that I think is just a PPR gold mine.
Yeah.
He's going to get the targets over and over again, and like you said, the Redskins in the slot is just almost invisible. It just doesn't happen. So that's the reason why I could get behind Goff at 51, but I do like Cousins at 61 too. Cousins is a guy that people forget. Sure, he had a rough week last week, but last year, fantasy-wise, even when they get down, that just means he throws it more and more. He could have games with 2 or 3 picks. It would still get you a boatload of points because that's what Kirk Cousins does, is wing it around the field. And the Rams defense, as long as Aaron Donald is not there to clog up things and get a pass rush going, they're not as good as people think they are. So both those guys are in play. Like you said, maybe not top options. I'd like the receivers a lot more. One name I want to throw out there at running back at $3,800 is Chris Thompson as a check down option for Cousins. They gave him a few carries, but he had 5 targets, 4 catches for 52 yards. I know Bucks, you know him way better than I do, but for $3,800, there is some upside there.
Yeah, there's definitely upside. I'm just so disheartened.
I can hear it in your voice.
I want to fade them so bad, and then they just suck me in.
It's because you know how good their offense can be.
Yes. I think here's the one thing I did want to mention. I understand this is a daily fantasy pod, but in season long, Terrell Pryor is a buy low option. Go out and get him because he's going to have a good year.
I agree.
And the thing people forget about him is last year was only his first season as a wide receiver. Like, he's still developing.
The dude is huge, man. We had field passes, and we were last week, and we were standing on the sideline while he was catching some balls. And that dude is a monster. I mean, he's just big.
And he's not afraid to take a hit like Des Bryant is. He'll go over the middle.
Yeah.
So let's take it to the last afternoon game we have. San Francisco at Seattle, a 13.5-point favorite in Seattle, 27-point team total, almost 28 actually, over under 42. This has just disaster all over it. Everybody's kind of worried because Seattle looks so bad, their O-line, everything about that. But James, kick us off with your plays in this one.
Okay, so this line opened with Seattle as a 12-point favorite, and it has been bet up to a 14-point favorite now. So we have 2 14-point favorites this week. Seattle isn't that good, I don't think. I talked about it last week.
But are the Niners that bad?
What?
Are the Niners that bad?
Okay, so I'll get to that here in a sec. But, like, Russell Wilson isn't elite, I don't think. And he's been lucky in his career to get away from all the pressure that comes to having the worst O-line on this side of the Mississippi. So that O-line is awful, and 49ers defensive line is actually pretty good. Like, they have DeForest Buckner, they have Solomon Thomas, they have Navarro Bowman. They have a good front seven. So I'm legitimately worried about that O-line against that front seven. I know that the 49ers defensive backs and their cornerbacks suck, but if Russell Wilson can't get away from the pass rush, it'll end up just like last week where he can't throw the ball. So and a lot of people talk about Russell Wilson's home road splits and the Seahawks home road splits, and that's all fun and good, but I think the home road splits are mostly noise. So I don't know. 14 points is a lot of points, and it's been bet up. I'm not buying the Seahawks this week. I don't like that O-line, and I think the 49ers front seven is going to be able to get to Russell Wilson more often than not.
So they rate really well for me. Russell Wilson rates really well for me, but I'm just not on it. On the 49ers side, Carlos Hyde had a 2-touchdown game against Seahawks last year, but I'm not going there because Sheldon Richardson is terrifying. So I don't like any of this game. I like the Seattle Seahawks defense because the 49ers offense is hilariously bad. But other than that, I don't want anything from this besides Seahawks defense.
What about you, Bucks?
Yeah, this one's another one of those weird ones. I agree. I don't think Seattle is as good as apparently people are making them out to be, mainly because I don't think they have the O-line to sustain Russell Wilson and creating time to make a bunch of plays happen. I think Russell Wilson's good, and I think Doug Baldwin's great. But there's just not too many pieces of this game that I really enjoy. I think if I had to go out and get somebody, Pierre Garçon might be one that I look at just because I think he's going to be a heavy favorite to catch a bunch of balls, 5-6 balls, something like that. And then you have guys like Goodwin who can make a play at any given moment. But overall, I mean, I'm not a big fan of this game. Games like this where you have such a low point total and such a massive spread that I think is wrong. I typically don't like to take a big piece of because I think there's too many different variables at play, especially in a slate like this where there's so many good spots for so many good players. I'm not going to have a big piece of this game.
Yeah, I can see arguments for Russell and company. I get it. But I also agree with everything you guys just said. The only guy I'm really targeting in this game besides the Seattle defense would be Pierre Garçon. That's who I had circled here. $4,900. And the thing is no matter what the score is, as long as he's on the field, Hoyer's throwing his direction. That's just what's going to happen. Yeah. There's no way around that. So if he catches 70% of the passes to him, he's going to get probably 6 or 7 catches. So
one that I think is considerable is Marquise Goodwin, because he did have like 4 bombs during that last game, and Richard Sherman isn't gonna be on him, I don't think, at all.
No.
If he catches one long bomb for 90 yards and a touchdown, he pays off considerably.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I had him in a lot of lineups last week, and he just missed 2.
Yeah.
I was dying on that one. But the biggest concern for me there is, will Hoyer have enough time to throw it 20 yards plus down the field? That's one of my concerns. But I totally agree. For 3,500 in a GPP, it's definitely in play. There's no question about that. Let's get to the Sunday night shootout. At least on paper, it is Green Bay at Atlanta, NFC Conference rematch. Atlanta minus 2.5 point favorites, over under 54. Bucks, take us away.
Yeah, I love this game. I think that
don't fade part 2.
Yeah, exactly. I think that this will be obviously a heavily owned game. The reason why I like a big piece of this game is I think that people will gravitate to Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers for the name, and I think Matty Ice gets a little overlooked here. It added a little bit of a discount to Tom Brady, and the reason why I like Matty Ice this week is because I think Julio has a ridiculous game. I mean, Green Bay, they did a pretty good job last week, but they can get torched at any given moment. And I think Julio Jones versus, I don't know who he's playing. I think it's like Quentin Rollins or something. I think he's going to just dominate this game. So I think Julio alone, I could see helping Ryan hit value in itself. So I think this, to me, sets up like one of those like Julio 180-yard 1 or 2 touchdown type games for me. So he's my core play this week. I love him this week. I think outside of him, obviously Rodgers is in play every single week. But a guy that I really like this week because I think he has huge value in both the pass game and running game is Ty Montgomery. I think he will be overlooked a bit because you have obviously Jordy, you have Devontae Adams and Cobb and Rodgers. But the two guys that I'm interested in playing on that side are Montgomery and Michael Bennett. I think that Bennett has a really big opportunity this week as well. Atlanta can be exposed over the middle, and I think he has a huge game for $3,900. So big value there. Other than one guy that I think, I'm not sure if it's sustainable, but one guy that I really liked last week, just with some of the routes he was running, was Sanu. He's always a professional. He always does a great job, but he really surprised me with some of the routes he was running. But outside of that, I mean, I love Devontae Freeman in general most weeks, but I'm fading him this week. I think for $7,300, there's other options around that are better. And obviously, I'm not touching either of these defenses.
Yep, I agree with pretty much all of that. What about you, James?
I have interest more on the Packers side than the Falcons side, but obviously a lot of interest in this game. I talked a lot about Aaron Rodgers last week, about how I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. It doesn't matter who he's facing. So, I mean, I'm obviously on Aaron Rodgers. Jordy Nelson, fantastic, always. Interestingly, last week, Green Bay did not have a single red zone opportunity.
How crazy is that?
It's incredible. Yeah,
That's
not a
nuts.
single red zone opportunity. So we didn't get to see Jordy Nelson and Aaron Rodgers where they're at their best, which is in the red zone. They have that like mental mind meld that goes on between those two, and he just always finds him. So I really like Jordy Nelson. I am off Cobb this week, I think, because I think that the market share goes back to Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I don't like Cobb this week either.
Yeah, I'm not big on him, especially because he did well. The one thing that I wanted to mention really quick is Ty Montgomery is going to be gross chalk this week, dude. Like,
Yep, I don't care.
ultra chalk. He is so cheap. He's what, 5,800? He is free for the market share that he has in that backfield. They don't have anyone else.
Take all my money.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, I have to.
so
This will be the biggest piece. This is my Zach Ertz play of the week.
Yeah, last week I had 95% Todd Gurley. I probably have 95% Ty Montgomery this week, just because Atlanta is awful against receiving backs. They're awful against running backs in general. Ty Montgomery is too cheap. And the PPR upside is massive. They can just swing it to him outside constantly. So I really like Ty Montgomery. On the other side of the ball with Falcons, I don't think so. This is a playoffs rematch, right, with the Packers and the Falcons. But during the playoffs, the Falcons had Kyle Shanahan, and this time they don't. And I don't think that the Falcons' offense is going to be as high-powered. I don't think they'll be able to keep up with Aaron Rodgers this time. I think the Falcons lose this game pretty badly. But I just don't have the same interest that I did. The only person I want is Julio, and I want as much Julio as I can possibly handle. Because I agree, this is that game where Julio Jones just goes all the way off and annihilates whoever's in his way. I agree. I think it can prop up Matt Ryan a little bit, but I don't really have interest in stacking the Falcons side. I just want a whole bunch of Packers stacks with Julio Jones on the other side to bring it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. Obviously, like you said, both quarterbacks are in playbooks. Rodgers more so than Ryan, but Ryan does make for that angle that out of the four big guys, like you mentioned, he should be the lowest owned out of the four. Nelson, obviously, Julio is an outstanding play, especially at that price point. He might get overlooked, I think, or not overlooked, but people might try to go elsewhere. I do like Cobb. I like Cobb and Adams. I don't really care which one you go with. I think Cobb, they showed it towards the end of last season. That became one of his go-to guys in the slot there, and I could see that happening again this week. But Adams even had 7 targets last week. Cobb had 13. He's not going to have 13 again, but even if they split those 20 targets, like 9, 11, or 8, 12, I'll still take either one for 59 or 5,600. They're both going to have big games. I think Green Bay just runs wild in the passing game. And you nailed it. Montgomery, you please play Ty Montgomery. Just play him. It's that simple. Unless he gets hurt, which we don't hope for, it's Ty Montgomery. Let's go to the Monday night game. Detroit at the Giants. Giants 3.5-point favorites. Total 43.5. James, what do you got here?
Well, the line originally opened at 5 for the Giants, and it's been closed down to 3. That might be because OBJ has not been confirmed playing. It might be because people realize that Eli Manning is an absolute trash can.
Yes.
No yet, but it did move a little bit in the Lions' favor. The majority bets are on the Lions, though, so it's not reverse. I don't really have any interest in either side of this game. If Odell Beckham Jr. is back, then I like OBJ, and that is it. Plain simple. Period. I don't want anything else.
Yeah, it's OBJ, and I mentioned in our chat earlier, if Detroit game, which this just looks like an ugly game all around. I want nothing to do with, but Shane Vereen, check down Shane could be something at 4K, but there's likely better options. What are you thinking, Bucks?
The only guy that I would even consider playing, and it's just because I love him on DK every week, is Theo Riddick. But with that being said, play Thursday through Monday and fade the Thursday and Monday game and just enjoy yourself.
Yep.
Exactly. One play I forgot to mention in the Seattle SF game, if you want an ultra punt at tight end, is Kittle, the tight end for the Niners, 2,500. He was getting targeted a ton outside of Garcon in that matchup. So
I agree.
Something to think about there. Let's just do a couple quick hits here. Bucks, give me your top guy at each position that you'll be looking at. If you can.
Yeah, I mean, Brady is going to be my top guy at quarterback. My top guy at running back is Ty Montgomery. Outside of Montgomery, I'm playing Cohen. My top receiver is going to be Julio Jones and Martavius Bryant. My top tight end this week is Martellus Bryant. Jesus Christ. Bennett, sorry. I like Bennett a lot this week. I do like Reed this week as well, so I like those. And then, again, I think San Diego is the only defense I'm playing this week just because they're so cheap and they have such a high potential for value.
What about you, James?
All right, yeah, Brady is going to be my top quarterback. That's not super close. It's going to be between Brady and Rodgers, I think. Yeah. And then obviously I'm going to have some Derek Carr because I think it's funny that he's not going to be owned like at all. My running backs, I really, really like Lev Bell. I'm going to try to fit him in as many lineups as I can. And then after that, it's Ty Montgomery. Those are pretty much the only two that I'm super, super high on. I really like Tariq Cohen as well. I will have some shares of him. At tight end, I like Zach Ertz. I like Rob Gronkowski. And I like Colby Fleener. And then at wide receiver, my top option is Julio Jones. Not close, even a little bit. And then I really like Keenan Allen, and I really like Martavis Bryant. I think is a great play.
Yes.
For myself, it goes to Rodgers for me. That'll be my top guy, but you cannot ignore Brady. I was telling everybody that I could talk to on Friday that pray for New Orleans because they're going to go on a mission and destroy people. So Brady and Rodgers, Then down below, it's Montgomery and Lynch for me, and then Cohen. Those would be my big three. There's obviously other options there. At the wide receiver position, we look at the likes of, I love Fitzgerald in that matchup, Keenan Allen, and then if you want to get weird, go to Cooper Kupp. That's the other one I like there. Chargers defense is obviously in play, and then I like Ertz as a play no one's really going to look at there compared to some of the other guys on the slate. And then don't sleep on Cameron Brate. I like that as a play in that Tampa Bay game as well. All right, guys, we hit every game. We hit our big plays. Any final thoughts, Bucks, James?
Yeah, hopefully you guys make some money this week. Last week was weird. Hopefully we get back to some real football.
Yeah.
What about you, James?
The only thing I have to say is if Kerwin Williams is going to be chalk, just max enter every GPP that you can, because I think that's easy bust for me. That's an easy bust play.
There you go.
After that, just make sure that you go to charitywater.org and check out that charity. Still pushing that for the rest of the month. So those are my two things that I got to say.
Cool.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Let's get it this weekend, guys. Good luck to everybody. This was the 2 Point Conversion NFL DFS Pod Week 2. We'll catch you guys next week.